So in 2020, you have this man trapped in the London lockdown.
Right.
He's watching his business collapse, he gets severely ill, and then on top of a global crisis, he starts losing his eyesight.
Which is just, I mean, that's an unimaginable sequence of events to deal with all at once.
Exactly. And he's been permanently blind since May 2023. But the wild part is, when you ask him about that specific period today, he doesn't say it was a nightmare.
No, he doesn't.
He actually describes it as very enjoyable.
Yeah, and that is a statement that just forces you to completely pause. Like, you hear that and immediately wonder if it's, a coping mechanism.
Right.
Or maybe some form of deep psychological denial, because it sounds almost contradictory to human nature.
I thought the exact same thing when I first read it. But today we are doing a deep dive into the terrifying mathematics of modern survival.
It really is terrifying when you break it down.
It is. We're looking at how this man Osman, who's widely known online as the Blind Muslim Yogi, how he used a combination of extreme biological adaptation and artificial intelligence to just completely rewrite the rules of resilience.
Yeah, and we are stripping down a really fascinating transcript from him today.
Right. And for those who don't know, Osman is a master-level bioenergy healer, a yoga and meditation teacher, and an entrepreneur. He runs YogaWellness786.com.
And he's been practicing at an advanced level for, 50 years?
50 years, yeah. He attained his first samadhi experience by the time he was 19.
Wow.
And the mission for you, listening right now, is to unpack how this incredibly unique figure bridges this massive, seemingly impassable gap between ancient mindfulness practices and ultra-modern machine learning.
Because usually, we are looking at a synthesis of two worlds that are almost never in dialogue.
Yeah, they're totally separate.
Right, you have the esoteric, deeply internal, slow work of yoga, and then you have the instantaneous, cold, hard logic of artificial intelligence.
Most people treat them as opposing forces.
Exactly, but Osman treats them as two halves of an engine.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before he even gets into the radical AI strategies or the neuroscience of his blindness, he starts with a brutal reality check about the world we live in.
He really pulls no punches there.
No, he doesn't. And I should note, he provides a really fascinating disclaimer up front. He makes it clear that his natural therapies and his services are complementary.
Right. They aren't replacements for medical treatment.
Exactly. He's very pragmatic about telling people to see qualified medical professionals. It's about building a physiological foundation, right?
Yeah, it's not about rejecting modern medicine. He's very clear on that.
But once that foundation is set, he turns his attention to the one thing that is stressing, almost everyone out right now.
The modern job market.
The job market, yes.
He hits the ground running with this assessment that just strips away all the usual corporate rhetoric. I mean, there's this pervasive ambient panic right now about AI replacing the human workforce.
Oh, everywhere. You can't escape it.
Right. And Osman looks at that panic and asks this highly disruptive question. He says, why are you so terrified of losing a system that mathematically isn't working for you anyway?
That is such a huge point. And he brings the raw economics to back it up,
Yeah.
using London as his baseline.
Which is a massive, developed global economic hub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this right now, think about your own monthly overhead. If you're on your commute, just calculate how much of today's wage is just going to keep a roof over your head.
It's sobering.
It's depressing, honestly.
Yeah.
Osman points out that the average salary for a regular job in London is around 36 to 40,000 pounds a year.
Yeah, which
It sounds okay, right?
It does. On paper, to a lot of people, that sounds like a functional, middle-of-the-road number. But the gross figure is an illusion.
It totally is.
Right.
He breaks it down to the net reality. After taxes, that average income leaves a person with about 2,600 pounds a month.
Right.
Now take that 2,600 pounds and try to run a family on it.
You literally can't.
You can't. Imagine a single income household. Maybe one partner stays home with the young kids, and you need just a standard 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Osman estimates you need at least 4,500 to 6,000 pounds a month just to survive that scenario.
Just to scrape by.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to live without constant grinding financial terror, you probably need closer to 5,000 or 10,000 pounds a month.
The disparity is what we really need to focus on here. I mean, you have a net income of 2,600, and a basic family living requirement that is literally double or triple that amount.
It's insane.
It isn't a matter of budgeting better or, skipping your morning coffee.
Right, the avocado toast argument.
Exactly. It's a mathematical impossibility. The margins are completely negative from the moment you wake up.
And the societal consequence of this, according to his breakdown, is that 60% of people simply aren't getting married or starting families.
Wow. 60%.
Yeah, and not because of some cultural shift, but because they physically, literally cannot afford the barrier to entry. Osman views the traditional job model, trading your limited time for a fixed, inadequate salary, as fundamentally toxic.
Which completely recontextualizes the entire conversation around AI anxiety, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
If the traditional path to a secure life has already collapsed under the weight of inflation and stagnant wages, then the fear of AI taking your job is actually a misplaced emotion.
That's a good way to put it, misplaced emotion.
It's masking a deeper realization that the system itself is just broken.
But let me press you on this.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to sit back and, philosophize about a broken system.
Sure.
If I am someone working that 36,000-pound job,
Yeah.
and I see a language model that can write code or draft marketing copy faster than I can,
Yeah.
isn't my fear totally justified? I mean, it's one thing to say the ship is sinking. It's another thing to be mad at the water pouring in when you don't know how to swim.
The fear is totally justified, yeah. But we have to look at why that person feels they can't learn to swim.
Okay, why?
It comes down to cognitive bandwidth and the biological reality of financial paralysis.
Interesting.
When you are operating on 2,600 pounds a month and your living costs are 4,500, your brain enters a state of chronic survival mode.
You're just constantly running from an invisible tiger.
Exactly that. Your amygdala is firing, your
Yeah.
system is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. From an evolutionary standpoint, when you're in survival mode, your brain actively shuts down the prefrontal cortex.
Wait, it literally shuts it down.
Yeah, because the prefrontal cortex is the area responsible for creative problem solving, long-term planning, learning complex new systems.
Oh, wow.
Your biology assumes that if you're starving or under physical threat, you shouldn't be brainstorming, you should be fighting or fleeing.
So you literally can't think your way out of it.
Right. People stuck in this toxic economic model lose the neurological capacity to imagine a way out. They are structurally exhausted.
That makes an uncomfortable amount of sense.
Right.
The exhaustion isn't laziness, it's a biological symptom of terrible math.
Exactly.
And this is where Osman's approach gets incredibly actionable. Because if AI is just a tool, the real variable is human resilience.
Yes.
If your baseline psychology is shattered by that 2,600 a month grind, the best technology in the world won't save you.
Me won't do a thing.
So Osman doesn't just point out the sinking ship. He completely abandons the traditional employment model and moves to a contract-based framework using AI as an escape hatch.
He advocates for identifying whatever inherent skill you possess. And he really stresses that everyone has something they can monetize.
Right.
You take that, you outsource it on a contract basis, and you take control of the transaction. But the heavy lifting, the scaling, and the logistical brainstorming, you offload that entirely to artificial intelligence.
And he does this in ways that are just so refreshingly grounded. Like, he actually started by having a conversation with an AI about that exact London living situation.
Oh, I loved this part.
He asked the system what it takes for a single person to just exist in a single room in London today.
Yeah.
The AI instantly crunched the current rental markets, transit costs, basic grocery inflation, and it confirmed that a single person needs a bare minimum of 2,000 pounds a month.
Just to survive.
Just to survive. With zero entertainment, zero savings. It validated his entire economic thesis in seconds.
And what's fascinating here is the speed of validation. Before AI, gathering that kind of hyper-local, up-to-date economic data would require hours, maybe days.
Oh, compiling municipal reports, checking rental boards, building spreadsheets.
Exactly. The AI acts as this massive processing engine that compresses days of logistical friction into seconds.
It compresses time. He gives another example of this that honestly blew my mind.
The heat map.
Yes. He needed to find a specific target demographic for his business people in the top 1% income bracket.
Right.
Now, the old way of doing this would be moving to a city, spending 3 months networking, realizing the money isn't there, packing up and moving to the next city.
A nightmare.
Instead, he prompted the AI to map out the earning capacity ranges across 3 specific cities. The AI gave him the exact geographical heat map of his target audience instantly.
That's incredible.
He estimates that single prompt saved him 9 months of trial and error, 9 months of his life.
We really need to pause and think about the implications of that. He reclaimed almost a year of human lifespan from a machine.
It's wild when you put it like that.
But this introduces a fascinating leveling effect. If everyone listening to this right now has access to that same AI, and everyone can generate that same heat map.
Right. Raw data processing is no longer a competitive advantage.
Exactly. If everyone has the same supercomputer, how do you win?
That's the question. How do you win?
You win through human intent. The distinguishing factor in a post-AI world isn't the accumulation of knowledge, it's the extreme specificity and curiosity of the prompts we design.
The machine is neutral.
Completely neutral. It only executes the parameters set by the human imagination.
Which brings me to my favorite, weirdest example from his transcript, because it highlights that exact kind of hyperspecific human intent. He used the AI to track down raw, unsalted peanuts.
I mean, it sounds like a joke, but it perfectly illustrates the concept of friction removal.
Right. He loves raw, unsalted peanuts, but anyone who shops for nuts knows everything on the shelf is heavily roasted, covered in salt, covered in oils.
Yeah, it's impossible to find.
Finding raw ones is a massive pain. So he didn't just Google it and scroll through endless, SEO-optimized junk articles.
Top 10 peanuts of 2026.
Exactly. He used the AI to scour agricultural supply chains. He had it find a wholesale supplier in the specific region who would deliver bulk, raw, unsalted peanuts and flax seeds directly to him at the lowest price point.
Let's look at the mechanics of what he actually did there. He bypassed the entire consumer retail structure. He didn't ask the AI where's the nearest grocery store. He asked it to analyze supply-side logistics, compare wholesale price per ounce, factor in shipping constraints, and output a direct business-to-consumer purchasing option.
For a private citizen.
Yeah. The AI doesn't care if it's analyzing macroeconomic wealth distribution or the supply chain of a legume. It just executes the complexity of the human demand.
But then he scales this exact same logic up to something with massive life-altering stakes. He talks about a situation where he had to present a legal argument in court.
And this is where we have to critically analyze the risk and the mechanism, because using AI in a legal setting is notoriously dangerous.
Right. We've all seen the headlines of lawyers getting sanctioned because they used a language model that just completely hallucinated fake cases that didn't exist.
Oh, yeah. The fake precedents.
But Osman took a few lines of his basic defense, like his core human argument, fed it into the AI, and generated a massive, comprehensive legal document. It pulled recent case law, published journal articles, and built a multi-page argument that actually won him the case and saved him thousands in legal fees. How did he avoid the hallucination trap?
Well, it comes down to constraint prompting and domain knowledge. The lawyers who get in trouble with AI usually ask it a very lazy question, like, write me a brief to win this case.
Yeah.
The AI, wanting to please the user, will just invent a perfect, fictitious precedent to give you what you asked for.
Right. It's just predicting the next best word.
Exactly. Osman, however, approached this with a highly disciplined mind. He provided the exact few lines of defense. He likely constrained the AI by telling it to only cross-reference verified, published databases within a specific jurisdiction.
And to cite its sources for human review.
Precisely. He used the AI as a paralegal, not the lead attorney. He maintained the strategic steering wheel.
That is such a crucial distinction.
He used the AI to format the argument into the strict, pedantic language of the court and to synthesize the volume of data, but the core logic remained entirely human.
It's a democratization of resources, really.
Historically, you would need a massive retainer to have a law firm spend 40 hours drafting that document. Osman did it for the cost of his internet connection.
But using a tool like this requires you to look at the world differently.
How so?
Well, to look at a disruptive technology that is upending the global economy and say, great, this is going to help me find peanuts and win court cases, requires a bizarrely mechanical view of optimism.
Yeah, it requires a fundamental reframing of how we process change. We are naturally biased to view disruption as a threat.
Right.
But Osman has trained himself to view disruption as a kinetic energy source, which brings us to his philosophy on adaptability, rooted in what he calls Newtonian psychology.
He starts with this bold claim that a dynamic, constantly changing world is a feature of human existence, not a bug. We all complain about how fast things are moving, but he says if things stayed the same, like if you woke up every day to absolute, unchanging predictability life, would be so excruciatingly boring that people would have grounds to commit suicide.
That's intense.
It is. He says that chaos is what gives reality its flavor.
He's addressing the human paradox there. We crave comfort and stasis. We want our routines to be safe. But neurological stasis leads to profound apathy.
Right.
A brain without novel stimuli essentially begins to shut down.
So, to navigate this required chaos, he applies Isaac Newton's law of physics to human emotion.
The law of motion.
Yeah, the law is,
Yeah.
for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Osman translates this to psychology. For every negative situation you encounter, there is an equal and opposite positive advantage inherently baked into this scenario.
Just waiting to be brainstormed.
Exactly.
It is a mathematical certainty in his framework. The more devastating the negative event, the larger the hidden positive leverage must be.
Okay, I have to challenge this. Because when you say for every negative there's a positive, it sounds dangerously close to toxic positivity.
I can see that.
Like if someone loses their job or their home or gets a terrible medical diagnosis, someone cheerfully saying, look on the bright side, there's a hidden advantage. That feels incredibly dismissive and frankly infuriating.
Oh, it can absolutely be infuriating. And the distinction between toxic positivity and Osman's Newtonian mindset is vital here.
Okay, what's the difference?
Toxic positivity is fundamentally about denial. It is the refusal to sit with pain. It's saying, don't be sad, just smile, which invalidates the physiological reality of grief or fear.
Right.
Osman isn't denying the negative. He acknowledges the heavy weight of the trauma. But he treats finding the advantage not as a cheerful suggestion, but as a strategic, almost militant mandate.
Here's where it gets really interesting. He's not saying the bad thing isn't bad. He's saying you have to mine it for raw material.
Yes, by forcing your brain to look for the hidden advantage, you change your structural relationship with the adversity. When a crisis hits, our default state is passive victimhood. Things are happening to us. By demanding that your brain search for the counterbalance, you shift from being a passive victim to an active detective.
The crisis becomes a puzzle you are actively trying to solve.
Precisely.
It makes me think of an old vinyl record. Let's say you're listening to a record, and the A-side suddenly gets a massive, deep scratch across it.
Oh, no.
The toxic positivity approach is to just sit there, listen to the horrible skipping noise, and pretend it sounds like avant-garde jazz.
Right.
The victim mentality is to take the record off the turntable and smash it against the wall in anger. But the Newtonian mindset looks at the record and says, okay, the A-side is completely ruined, but the physical existence of this disc implies there is a B-side. You acknowledge the scratch, but you physically flip the record over.
I love that analogy because flipping the record requires physical action. The new music doesn't just play itself, you have to intervene.
Yes.
And Osman's ultimate goal with this constant intervention is to forge himself into what he calls a tough cookie.
Which implies a hardened resilience. He wants to look back on his life and see it not as a miserable slog of unfair events, but as an enjoyable series of difficult puzzles that built his identity.
Yeah.
But again, isn't this exhausting? Operating like a psychological detective 24/7, constantly reframing every lost client, every broken appliance, every piece of bad news. Doesn't the brain just want to rest and be mad for a minute?
It is undeniably exhausting in the short term. Overriding our default emotional responses requires a tremendous amount of caloric and cognitive energy.
I bet.
But we have to evaluate the return on investment over a timeline of decades. Osman argues that if you can force this adaptability day by day, you might experience friction in the moment, but you end up maintaining genuine passion for your life 90% of the time.
90% passion is a wildly high metric for modern adulthood.
It is. But the alternative is yielding to the negativity, which creates a compounding debt.
What do you mean by debt?
Well, if you don't reframe the trauma, it settles into your neurology as bitterness. When you look back after 10 or 20 years, your retrospective view of your own life is that it was a tragedy.
Oh, wow.
The daily exhaustion of reframing is the premium you pay for a memory bank that you actually enjoy revisiting.
You are actively curating the narrative of your own history.
Exactly.
But everything we've talked about so far, economic stress, legal battles, finding peanuts, that's all external. It's manageable.
Yeah.
This philosophy gets put to the absolute terrifying test when the negative situation becomes physically devastating. And this brings us back to the hook of our deep dive.
This is where Osman's framework shifts from an interesting intellectual exercise into a staggering reality.
Right. Osman talks about the COVID-19 lockdowns. For most of the world, this was a time of isolation, financial panic, and anxiety. For Osman, it was catastrophic.
It really was.
He notes that during this period, he got very ill. But more than that, he began losing his eyesight. And as we mentioned, since May 2023, he is permanently blind.
Which means, in his videos and his work now, he's describing things based purely on his memory of having normal eyesight before then.
Exactly. And to lose a primary sense, especially in adulthood, is a trauma that shatters a person's entire spatial and conceptual relationship with the world.
Completely. And yet he claims that when he looks back on that specific period of being locked down and going blind, he only remembers the nice parts.
He genuinely describes it as an enjoyable period. How does someone flip the B-side on blindness?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it forces us to examine the biological extremes of acceptance. He didn't panic and expend energy fighting a reality he couldn't control.
Right.
He leaned into the physical shutdown.
He decided to test an experiment. He remembered a rumor. He attributes it to Albert Einstein, though whether it's historically accurate doesn't really matter. It served as his prompt. That human beings ideally should sleep 14 to 16 hours a day. Because all external businesses were shut down and he couldn't leave anyway, he decided to just do it. He ended up sleeping an average of 13 to 14 hours a day for months.
And in the waking hours, what did he do?
He didn't watch the news and panic. He used the limited waking time to deeply enhance his internal energy practices, to refine his yoga.
Which he studied extensively, remember. The bioenergy healing, the telepathic healing, using quantum and entanglement principles.
Right, his specialization in critical care and terminal illnesses. He finally had the time to turn all of that rigorous practice inward, up to 18 hours a day at some stages. And he finally read fiction. He discovered books and authors he'd never had the bandwidth for. He focused entirely on rest, energy, and imagination.
This is a masterclass in extreme physiological adaptation. We need to look at the neuroscience of what was happening in his brain while he was sleeping those 14 hours.
Okay, tell me.
When a person loses their vision, the brain doesn't just leave the visual cortex dormant. The brain is ruthlessly efficient.
So what does it do?
It undergoes massive neuroplastic rewiring. It begins to co-opt the occipital lobe, the visual processing center, and repurposes it to heighten auditory processing, tactile sensation, and spatial awareness.
The brain literally has to rebuild its own hardware.
Exactly. And neuroplasticity of that magnitude requires a staggering amount of caloric and electrical energy.
Which he was providing through rest.
Yes. If Osman had spent those months awake, stressed, panicking about his business, and flooded with cortisol, his brain's resources would have been diverted to managing the stress response.
Wow.
By sleeping 14 hours a day and removing external stimuli, he placed himself in a state akin to biological hibernation.
Like an animal that gets injured in the winter. It doesn't limp around the forest burning calories. It finds a cave, shuts down its non-essential systems, and goes into a deep sleep. So 100% of its cellular energy can be routed toward healing and adaptation.
That is precisely it. His extreme rest wasn't a form of psychological denial. It was the ultimate biological requirement for his brain to manage a catastrophic transition.
So focusing on the nice parts, the fiction, the deep rest, the yoga, was the mechanism he used to keep his cortisol at zero.
Giving his nervous system a clean environment to rewire itself. And honestly, his success with this ties back to his whole approach. He says a 90% success rate in recovery isn't extraordinary if you understand how natural energy works.
Right. His whole thing is that cancer and severe ailments are often a result of modern lifestyles depleting our natural energies.
Exactly. And natural spirituality and yoga protocols replenish that lost energy. He says it boosts immunity naturally without even needing external energy healing if you just follow the protocol.
It's incredible. The discipline required to just accept the loss of sight and pivot entirely to sleep and fiction. You don't just stumble into that kind of mental control.
No, you definitely don't.
And what surprised me in the transcript is that this specific ability to cleanly separate what he can control from what he cannot didn't originate in a monastery or an ashram.
Where did it come from?
It originated in a courtroom.
It's a beautifully grounded origin story for his pragmatism.
Osman explains that his core philosophy of acceptance came from his time working in the legal profession as an articled clerk.
Which is a trainee attorney.
Yes. It is a notoriously grueling, high-stress, burnout-heavy phase of legal training where you are buried in paperwork and human conflict.
You are dealing with people on the absolute worst days of their lives, trying to navigate complex statutes.
Right. And while he was a clerk, his principal, the senior lawyer mentoring him, did something highly unconventional.
Oh,
He sent young Osman to attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings.
really?
Yeah, not because Osman had an addiction issue, but because the law firm dealt with many clients whose legal jeopardy was rooted in alcohol. The principal wanted him to understand the messy, raw, human element behind the legal statutes.
That is brilliant. The senior lawyer understood that you cannot effectively counsel a client if you don't understand the psychological cage they are trapped in.
And it was at these AA meetings that Osman learned the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
The classic.
He saw people fighting for their lives using this simple framework of radical acceptance, and he adopted it as his operating system for both legal crises and, eventually, his own health crises.
That courtroom pragmatism heavily influences how he teaches adaptation today. And you see it in his scientific approach. Like, he's dedicated his life to simplifying these complex protocols from ancient yoga sciences to achieve results easily.
So what does this all mean for someone trying to adopt his methods?
Well, he is deeply opposed to the fundamentalist approach to self-improvement. He explicitly warns people against going cold turkey when trying to adopt new lifestyle changes, even positive ones like yoga or diet protocols.
He insists that if you can't do a new protocol perfectly, you don't abandon it, but you also don't force it. You adapt it to fit your messy specific circumstances. You incorporate it mildly. But why is cold turkey so dangerous if the habit you are trying to build is healthy?
Because of how the nervous system reacts to sudden, massive systemic shock.
Okay, explain that.
Often when people hit a crisis, they try to reinvent their entire identity overnight. They throw out all their junk food, wake up at 4 a.m. and try to meditate for an hour.
They've all been there.
Yeah, but the brain perceives any sudden, massive deviation from routine as a threat, even if the new routine is healthy.
Your brain fights it.
The failure rate is massive because you are fighting your own biological homeostasis. Osman's legal training taught him that you have to negotiate with reality, not dictate to it.
It makes me think of trying to update your computer's operating system.
Oh, good analogy.
You know the update is good. It patches security flaws. It makes the system run faster. But if you force the system to reboot and install that massive update while you are in the middle of a vital, high-stakes Zoom call, what happens?
You don't just drop the call, you risk corrupting the system files entirely because the processor is overloaded.
Exactly. The system crashes. You have to download the update in the background, let it sit there, and then install it piece by piece when the computer has downtime.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Osman is saying you have to adapt the timing of your positive changes to the reality of your biological workflow. You install the yoga update 5 minutes at a time so you don't crash your nervous system.
And you know, people can actually try that 5-minute update for free. He offers a free 5-minute yoga and meditation program on his site, yogawellness786.com.
Oh, that's great. 5 minutes is super accessible.
It is, and he backs all of this up with empirical validation. He points out that the positive influences of these incremental mindfulness practices aren't just anecdotal.
Right.
He cites that mindfulness has been proven effective in over 50,000 scientific reports and studies. And he heard that statistic over a decade ago, so the volume of data confirming this is astronomical today.
And this leads to his final and I think most profound insight about how this ancient mindfulness directly connects back to our modern AI tools.
Yes, the full circle.
He explains that the true purpose of meditation isn't just to lower your blood pressure or give you a temporary break from anxiety. The purpose is to engineer a foundational state of mind so your subconscious can go to work.
This is where we touch on a neurological mechanism called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Break that down for us, because this is the key to his whole system.
The human brain is bombarded by billions of bits of sensory data every second. Sights, sounds, temperatures, peripheral movements.
Too much data.
Right. If you consciously process all of it, you would go insane. The reticular activating system is a network of neurons in the brainstem that acts as a bouncer for your conscious mind.
Okay.
It filters out the noise and only lets through information that it deems strictly relevant to you.
How does it know what is relevant?
That's the magic part. It uses what you focus on. If you decide you want to buy a red car, suddenly you see red cars everywhere.
Oh yeah, I've had that happen.
They were always there, but your RAS was filtering them out. Once you set the intention, the RAS highlights them. Osman says that when you are in a difficult situation, unemployed, sick, facing a crisis, and you don't have the answer, you don't panic.
You meditate.
You use meditation to calm the conscious mind, and you hold the question, How do I improve this? By holding that question calmly, you are programming your reticular activating system.
You're giving the bouncer a VIP list.
Yes. Your subconscious mind then spends 24 hours a day scanning your environment, your conversations, the internet, looking for clues that point toward a solution.
Clues that a stressed, panicked, cortisol-flooded mind would have completely filtered out.
Exactly.
And eventually, the answer appears. The subconscious mind finds the hidden advantage, and this creates a beautiful, holistic loop.
It really does.
He is using ancient internal mindfulness practices to program the biological filtering system of his brain. That clear, calm brain then gives him the extreme specificity and creativity required to effectively prompt an ultra-modern external tool like artificial intelligence.
The ancient silence literally feeds the modern prompt.
That's a great line.
If your mind is cluttered with fear, you ask the AI a bad question and get a bad result. If your mind is clear, you ask the AI for wholesale unsalted peanuts or a perfectly constrained legal defense, and you change your life.
It is the ultimate fusion of the oldest survival skills and the newest technology. Let's synthesize what we've uncovered today, because this is a massive paradigm shift.
Absolutely.
We started with the terrifying math of modern employment, realizing that clinging to a system that bankrupts you by design is a trap, and the fear of AI is often just the fear of transition.
We then explored the mechanics of that transition, using AI not as a replacement for human effort, but as a friction remover that scales human curiosity and intent, saving months of logistical grinding.
We tackled the Newtonian mandate of psychology, the refusal to be a passive victim, forcing the brain to find the equal and opposite advantage in every disaster, flipping the B side of the record.
We examined the biological reality of extreme adaptation, how deep rest and acceptance aren't denial, but the caloric necessity for neuroplastic rewiring in the face of profound physical trauma.
And finally, the wisdom of incremental change, taking the brutal pragmatism of a law firm's encounter with addiction and applying it to our own habits. No cold turkey, no crashing the system.
Just steady, subconscious programming that allows us to find the right prompts for our lives. It is a comprehensive architecture for navigating chaos.
And for anyone who wants to dive deeper into Osman's methods, he puts out a ton of free information on his YouTube channel. He even has a Patreon for paid live video, one-on-one consults, and premium energy healing. But all the foundational stuff is free.
Yeah, you can also search for the Blind Muslim Yogi on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Definitely hit follow and subscribe to help him spread this scientific approach to life. So to you listening right now on your commute, at your desk, or walking your dog, take a hard look at the dynamic disruptions happening in your own life.
Ask yourself the hard questions.
Are you viewing these disruptions strictly as a threat, exhausted from clinging to a broken smartphone battery? Or are you actively, strategically searching for your equal and opposite advantage?
When you try to improve your situation, are you forcing cold turkey changes that corrupt your biological hard drive? Or are you adapting them to the messy, actual reality of your day-to-day life?
It all comes down to the quality of the questions we allow to run in the background of our minds.
It really does. And I want to leave you with one final lingering concept to explore on your own.
What's that?
Think back to the reticular activating system. If it is true that your subconscious brain is a hypervigilant bouncer, constantly scanning your environment for clues to the questions you hold, what hidden answers are you currently walking right past, completely ignoring, simply because you haven't given your brain the right question yet?
Wow.
What if the impossible economic or personal situation you are facing right now is just waiting for the right prompt?
Keep adapting. We'll see you on the next deep dive.